Just give me everybody a recording started. Well, good morning, everyone, and let me be again another one to suggest that we're off to a new year, and here's to 2012 and what it will bring. Thank you for coming to this session. My name is Sandy Michalowski, and I am currently a consultant, a STEM consultant, covering both formal and informal education throughout the pipeline, K through college and beyond with the workforce. And I've been a member or participant of this conference for a few years already, and among my favorite sessions are the sessions where an organizer brings a panel of people. It could be industry people, it could be business industry, it could be educators, it could be people around a certain issue. So what I thought is, what if I propose to do a session with a set of resources. Three of our panelists are from the Bay Area, and one panelist and myself are from the Northwest. We're from the Seattle area. So this is that panel, and the coordinating concept is all around STEM education. And what I've done is tap who I believe to be among some of our national treasures. These are luminaries in their fields. We have two faculty, we have a researcher, we have a community nonprofit coordinator, director. Many of them have worked with NSF. Some of you know that the National Science Foundation, some of you know that the Advanced Technological Education Program, or the ATE program, of which MTech is one, right? So lots of touches on research related to the T in STEM. And this session attempts to, zoom out a ways and take a look at, from a long perspective, the long view, of how we prepare students and learners at all levels going through pathways, programs, options, career awareness, experiences for the underserved, and getting them all the way to being STEM ready for the workplace and future life. So with that, I want to introduce to you some of our wisdom keepers, as I call them. These are my esteemed colleagues, and you might want to follow along. I'm going to point out a few things from each of their bios, and then we'll start the talking points, which are on the back of the first page. So at the end here, we have Mr. Mike Clancy. He is a senior lecturer emeritus in the Computer Science Division of the University of California at Berkeley. He's an active member both of the U.S. computer science education community and has long been interested with a community of researchers in the psychology of programming. He's an active participant in ACM, the Computer Science Education Special Interest Group. He's done many, many papers, presentations, and co-authored papers. He also won the ACM Award for Lifetime Contributions to CS Education. His special interests include online learning for programming, and he's currently working with colleagues to develop lab-centric courses which trade lecture and discussion time for supervised hands-on time. And this includes everything from delivery of content through assessments, through supportive mechanisms, through feedback gathering, and analysis of performance. Here on my right is Ingrid Dahl, who is the director of NextGen for all of the youth programs at the Bay Area Video Coalition. And they're located here in San Francisco. She's formerly a program officer of Youth Media and the editor-in-chief of Youth Media Reporter at the Academy for Educational Development. She's done documentaries, she's done white papers, she's on board, she's a founding member of the Willie Mae Rock Camp for Girls. She lectures nationally and internationally on youth media, gender and music, and social change. And that's Ingrid. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Suzanne Marks, who is a tenured faculty member at Bellevue College in Bellevue, Washington. She teaches both online and classroom education in business technology systems and business management. She's also the author of many Microsoft Office textbooks for Pearson Prentice Hall. And at our college in Bellevue, I was with her there for 18 years, she is a pioneer of industry-driven and data-driven programs and degrees, bringing her experience forward. And last but not least is Dr. Louise Yarnall, next to Mike down there. Louise is a senior research social scientist at SRI's International Center for Technology and Learning. And for the past 12 years, her work has focused on assessment design, evaluation design, workforce education research, and community college faculty development with online tools. She currently is the lead for a targeted research project for ATE of National Science Foundation, and working on case studies of models on how to build partnerships and sustainability for best practices. She has developed assessments for both technical knowledge and 21st century skills in a range of fields in STEM. So please welcome all of our panelists. So with that said, what I'd like to do is, especially since we're a small, intimate group today, is take a look at the talking points. And I've given these points out to the panelists ahead of time and just ask them to think through some of the things that these talking points bring up. And I'd also like, once we hear from the panelists, our experts, I'd also like those of you here participating to offer up any of your wisdom or models or practices or questions that you might have that you'd like to engage our panelists about. So the first one is talking about, it's kind of like the keynote this morning. Your keynote speakers are talking about what are your perspectives on the trends, where's ICT going, where's the economy going, how can we prepare work-ready students. So the first bullet is about, from your own individual discipline and backgrounds and interests, what perspectives do you see that are emerging? What trends are emerging? What are you excited about looking forward? What's the next new thing that's coming around? What has changed in even the last 2 or 3 years? You know, we don't have to go far back to say, oh yeah, it's really different than 5 years ago or 10 years ago. That's like lifetimes in the STEM space. So today we're going to look at what do each of these experts see as emerging trends and forward-looking perspectives. Mike, would you like to start?
Sure. Sandy mentioned what we call lab-centric instruction, and that's a reaction and an attempt to provide an alternative to the, at least in my experience, the kind of standard way of running a big high enrollment course. So you picture what happens in the typical such course, and students are sitting there, you know, some are playing video games on their laptops, and some are listening, but if any learning at all takes place there, it's sort of passive learning, and what we're after is more active learning. And so what we've tried to do over the past 10 years is provide an alternative, and the way that's organized administratively is that we've swapped lecture time for hands-on supervised lab time. And so it's like a chem lab. Basically, you have a TA running the lab, and you have the students come to lab 6 hours a week typically, and there's 1 hour a week of lecture. And so we've sort of inverted the emphasis on in the traditional course on lecture. We've traded that for lab. The activities are all delivered online, so we use Moodle at the moment as our delivery vehicle, and they consist of the standard programming exercises that students would do in the traditional course, but also there's online and offline collaboration. There's lots of assessments embedded in the curriculum, and a wider variety of programming activities. So instead of just having the students write a program to do X, Y, Z, we have them analyze, we have them debug, we have them do all kinds of things. And we've designed and tested lab-centric versions of several of our lower division courses. What's the benefit for students? Well, one really neat aspect of the environment is that the TAs can see a lot of what the students are doing in the lab. And so typically, for instance, each lab section starts with a quiz. And so the lab instructor can look and see who got the quiz right, who got the quiz not so right, and be able to do some targeted tutoring at that moment. And for me as an educator, that's sort of the most thrilling thing about the system is this immediacy of feedback where the students need it. And so we try to ensure that that we don't figure out that they're confused about some really important thing, like a month into the course on the first exam. Active learning is going on. Students are doing stuff. And I mentioned a greater variety of activities. With 6 hours a week of lab, you have opportunities for a lot of different kinds of stuff. And in particular, we're focusing on collaboration between students, online, offline, in groups, and so forth. Constantly, our colleagues in industry say, well, you teach your students to collaborate. We really need collaboration in industry, and that's what we're trying to do there. And so this targeted tutoring and these opportunities for collaboration are what I see as the most important part of what we're doing. Recently, as part of the University of California Online Initiative, we started thinking about, so what we've got is sort of online, but it's really a blended kind of thing, because it's depending very much on the students being co-located with a TA. And so as part of the UC Online initiative, what we're exploring is replacing this targeted tutoring face-to-face by virtual work in the lab, and the same thing for the student collaboration. And so we'll be teaching a version of our data structures course in the summer that attempts to be completely online, and then we'll be evaluating how that works in comparison to our previous organization.
Am I allowed to ask you? Yes, absolutely. How big are your classes?
The classes are, well, hundreds, and the lab sections are we figured out that a single TA without any other help can manage about 25 students.
Okay, that's really clear. So, yeah, okay, I guess we'll start down the line. Go down the line, sure. So I'm going to pull the camera back a little bit and also add one other area of interest I have working at SRI. For those of you who aren't familiar with SRI, it's a research and development institute. It's a nonprofit, and a lot of the things that we use today and take for granted, like the computer mouse, like Tide detergent, like Siri, were all invented at SRI. So I'm in the social science part of the house, and we're very interested in really innovative ways of teaching. What you just described, Mike, sounds terrific. And I think the big trends, though, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the technology focus of the trends, and I'm also going to talk about the more practical, pragmatic, what is the real world like for your community college instructors. Basically, on the technology side, I agree. I think that they're moving more and more towards this hybrid, online sort of modality. And I think particularly for IT, it's a natural fit, because these are students who are very comfortable with their screen-based existence. And I think the real challenge in that space is to encourage and foster that collaboration, that social interaction and teaming, because those are skills that the employers really want. So that's going to be the challenge there. I think using social media in instructional materials, making them more like a social media kind of environment. I've heard about a wonderful effort in Wake Forest called BioBook, which was created by kind of a frustrated biology instructor who said, I'm a little, I don't want to say anything to offend anyone, but he wasn't happy with the fit between the textbook and the way he needed to teach basic genetics and things of that sort. So he said, why don't I come up with some system where, professors take the first pass at writing the textbook chapter, and then we make it interactive, and the students actually edit on a wiki-based environment, and then there are embedded quizzes to make sure the students are kind of reading and learning, and the instructor can track that learning and troubleshoot, just in time or reteach as needed. And the other thing is the students can talk to each other in the social environment and say, hey, I didn't really get that, or what you think, and it's not viewed as cheating, it's just we're reading the textbook, we're doing our reading. So I think things like that are very exciting. And I know that sometimes students, though, if you go back and you talk to them at some of your institutions, you may have seen this, they have kind of an attitude about online learning sometimes. It's not for everybody, and they feel like they're getting a second-rate option, you know, face-to-face is the Cadillac. And so it's not for everyone. So I think the hybrid approach tends to be the one where folks are moving. So that's the technology perspective. And then on the more pragmatic side, I mean, everybody kind of knows the tight budgets seem to be perhaps, unfortunately, a really long-term reality at the state level. And so what does this mean, particularly for an IT program or any of these programs where you have the hardware is changing all the time, the software is changing, you have to, the languages are changing, and you have to stay up to date. I mean, MPICT and programs like this are great because you can keep ahead of the trends, but I think that collaboration with industry is going to be so key and continue to be key. And for the instructor, right down to the instructor level, so to speak, not just, you know, the deans or the VPs of workforce, even the instructors are going to have to really be very kind of entrepreneurial and thoughtful about reaching out to industry. And the other side of the economic story here is, let's face it, it's tough to get a job right now. And I think it's going to be like that for, unfortunately, quite a long time. I mean, I've heard that our turnaround is not going to be till maybe 2016, if we're lucky. And they've been predicting that for years now. It has nothing to do with who's in Washington. It's structural. So I think, again, the big trend is instructors are going to be serving the role a little bit of a career connector or career center. I know a lot of instructors already do this, but to the extent that you have friends in industry and you're an adjunct who works in industry, and you know, that's going to be so powerful for your students because they're going to count on you to sort of put in a good word for them or hook them up with good apprenticeships and internships and stuff like that. So those are the big trends I see for the next 4 or 5 years or so.
Thank you. I'm really glad you mentioned collaboration because that's definitely a big piece of BAVAC, which is a 35-year-old media arts organization here in San Francisco. And our ongoing mission is to engage social change to the enabling of stories that are diverse, to enhance art education and technology. And since 1999, we've been sort of evolving a program called Digital Pathways, which is one out of 3 programs we have under the umbrella NextGen. So all of our youth programs fall under that umbrella. And Digital Pathways has become sort of a very STEM-heavy National Science Foundation partner wing program where we, in lab spaces, about 10 students in each lab, there are always 4 labs, we're focusing on specific training that is really intriguing by a lot of students because it's audio engineering. Like, how do I make beats? How can I actually use and create beats that go with an animation or a film? Like, what does that mean for somebody who has more of an arts interest with the sciences? Like audio engineering, we also have a video production class that this year is only for girls, and it's focused on bilingual females who might want to engage other aspects to diversify the industry in film. Then we also have 3D gaming and animation, where we have a lot of students who are not only just creating their entire games, but they're actually uploading them onto Facebook. And the last track that we have is open source, where we partner with Mozilla now on something called Popcorn.js. So we're using innovative new software applications and systems to engage students who are not only interested in computer science, but how do I actually take an artistic and even a film perspective in the ways that I develop my projects. So this is an interesting model because we're actually taking young people who are either, you know, outside of school, who are coming into this after-school program. It meets 5 hours a week from 4 to 6:30 Mondays and Wednesdays, usually all year round. We're doing a pilot program right now that starts in a couple of weeks because we've now received a new grant where we've changed a lot of things. We're now accepting students who are up to the ages of 24. A lot of these students have either not finished high school, who haven't considered going to City College, which is one of our partners through Pierre and MPIC. We also are realizing there are other challenges that we need to address, that some of the students might have had families as challenges to actually consider going into a City College environment, because there's a lot of financial burdens, or there's a lot of stereotypes that have been demystified that we need to demystify more appropriately as a media arts organization. So some of the trends, I guess, that we're seeing is, okay, there's a lot of young people who are really drawn to the arts. Maybe they're not really magnetized into school. Maybe there have been some barriers, but how can we, through a bigger partnership, really keep hold of students who are especially low income, youth of color, English is not their first native tongue? How do we engage that student demographic to come back into a bridge program? So they come through us, they're now going from this media arts organization back into the City College campus. We have like career events, so they're suddenly getting, oh, okay, here's what City College is. Oh, and here's some classes that actually correspond to what I just learned. So one of the things that we're also looking into from an outsider perspective looking in is, okay, well then how do we actually get these students credit so that they're like, well, I've already got 3 credits at City, I might as well keep going in City, and give them that boost that they really need to continue and sustain their career.
Thank you. Suzanne? So I'm going to build on some of the things that the panelists have already talked about. In our college, we teach the Office applications, Windows, Word, Excel, the business technology type classes. And we too are seeing the trend of the online. These students want to take these classes in an online environment. So basically our face-to-face classes have dried up. So that is a trend. So we no longer can even get a class to fill if we offer it fully face-to-face. So the trend that we have is that online is number 1 and hybrid then is number 2. And so we offer our classes in the hybrid 1 or 2 days a week, and then the rest would be online. So one of our trends is face-to-face is gone. Hybrid and online number 1 and hybrid number 2. I would say that another thing that we're seeing a trend is that students are really moving towards wanting to, and the publishers are moving towards this too, towards a mastery learning environment. Again, I do author for Prentice Hall, and we have a product called My IT Lab. Many of the other publishers have something like that, but it's a learning management system where the students go in and they have an opportunity to use an e-book. That's another trend that we're seeing. Same thing, students don't want to pay $125 for a textbook or more. I'm sure in computer science it's even more, or in botany or whatever, biology. And so, for example, this last quarter I taught an Excel class and a PowerPoint class, and I told the students, okay, well, the new trend is that we are moving away from a heavy, big paper textbook, and in My IT Lab you buy a code, and yes, you pay a fee for that, but embedded in there is an e-textbook. So that's a new trend, is an e-textbook. The other thing that I put in there was we had some pieces that for a relatively cheap way they could print out just pieces of it in a black and white, like the end of chapter homework kinds of things. So I think you're going to see more and more students are going to want to have that e-textbook, and they're not going to want to pay the $125 to $150 carry around the big, heavy, especially applications textbooks. They're probably even computer science type textbooks. So that's one trend that we're seeing. Then within these, like a My IT Lab system, it has these digital tutors, which Mike talked about too, and having those teachable moments, and it catches them. So they're moving along in the training, and then if they get stuck, there's a place where they can click on Hint. And so it's like a digital tutor where it can help them along. So let's say they're in an Excel equation. So, oh, I'm stuck, I don't know what it is. Well, they can click on Hint, and it can help them go through the path of it and teaches them. Also, at the end of that, it also can give them, they can click on a button, it gives them a study guide. So it's
maybe I can whiz through, you know, you've got the racehorses and the turtles, right, in your class. So you've got the racehorse that goes through and no problem. But maybe you have somebody who is a turtle, and so you can push a button and get a study guide for everybody at their own speed. So it's almost more like individualized instruction. It's more, and again, that's where we get into the mastery learning. Plus they can take the training over and over and over again at their own speed so that they can feel really comfortable before they move on to take the exam. And then there are some options for auto grading, etc., which are nice. And then there's some that are graded by the teacher. You know, it depends on how you want to set it up. But long story short is, when they get to the end, they have mastery learning, and that's what we want to have them be able to do. And they're working on projects. So it's a business problem that they're trying to solve. They're starting out with a blank sheet of paper, right, and they come out with some kind of a product that they have to do. So, so online or hybrid is one trend, mastery learning, ebooks, and these built-in tutors. Also, I would say that all of these tools from the publishers are getting more and more sophisticated. So they have, you know, built-in videos, they have built-in tutors, and every version that comes out from the publishers are becoming more and more sophisticated. So that's a trend. And then just kind of a PS, looking ahead in my world, what is the next trend is SharePoint. And SharePoint is the fastest selling software application that Microsoft has.
What is SharePoint?
SharePoint, you are using SharePoint and you don't even know. If you go out to many of the websites are built on SharePoint. But it is a collaborative software that we use it at our own school as our, like my BC, my Bellevue College is built on that. So it's an internal portal, and it's collaborative software where you, I call it a sandbox in the sky, where you can, I'll explain how we do it in our college. So, like in my division, we have all of our enrollment information. So today, if I'm here, I want to go in and I want to find out what the enrollments are for this winter semester quarter. I can go in, or if I want to find out what the policies or procedures are, I don't have to go get the manual off the shelf. And everything's live. It's housed on this one server, and it has libraries in different areas that are not describing it very well.
Sandbox in the sky.
Sandbox in the sky, where it has libraries in different pieces, where it's a collaborative software where everybody can go. And many colleges are using it like their portal, If you go to the Library of Congress, if you go to lc.gov, their site is built on that, or the Smithsonian is built on that. So those kinds of things. So anyway, that's just an aside. I'm sorry. It's a PS.
So obviously lots of commonality, but different focus into certain aspects of how technology education, training, engagement with students happens. I know from working in and around the National Science Foundation ATE program for the last almost 20 years that there's all these pockets and champions of innovation. There's so much going on, which is why we need these conferences, in the very least, to sort of pool our knowledge, find out who's doing what, where something's happening. And it's a mandate from the National Science Foundation when you have a grant or a project or a center that disseminating the good work is an expectation that you will all engage in. And so how do we get more visibility, more exposure, a broader base? How do we be more inclusive in disseminating some of these innovative, whether they're trends or tools or practices? How do we find out where the pockets of innovation are happening? And I'll maybe start with Louise right now, since and we'll skip around a little bit. Okay. because her work, so the National Science Foundation funds projects like any funder or funding agency would do. And then NSF also hires researchers to study the people doing the projects. And so we're all connected, but we have sort of a different angle into the center or the project or the activity. And it's part of what keeps the whole arena of STEM education and preparation really vital. So let's hear from Louise, who is a researcher. Let's hear what she thinks about disseminating innovative practices and ideas and concepts and how we spread the good word.
Okay. Well, I think first I'll just say what I think the trend really seems to be, and then I'll just talk about my project. But the webinar approach really seems to be catching on with the tight budgets again. People don't have the time to go flying around the country and all the time at the hotel and the transit and everything. You just want a targeted webinar to just say, hey, what's going on? So one of my colleagues in University of Illinois, Deborah Bragg, who is also doing targeted research for ATE, had a very well-attended webinar on her early results of her research. I was surprised. There were like 300 people who attended. So it seems to be a model that really seems to work. So I think that's going to be the trend for sharing a lot of information. The conferences, the flying around, the cost and all of that, it's just prohibitive for so many of us, particularly those of us who work with nonprofits. So, and I think one of the things though is you can always go to the people who are creating things and doing things. They can certainly tell you about what they're doing in their school. And there's a tremendous amount of activity in ATE. But also it's kind of nice to have the research perspective where we get the opportunity to be more generalists. We get to shop around a little bit and sort of look at what lots of different people, the doers, are doing. And then we get to kind of analyze it in some systematic ways and tell sort of a higher level story about the commonalities and the differences among these different approaches. So it's a little more of a 20,000 feet up view of all this bustling activity. And so I'm doing a project that is essentially, the goal is to develop some case studies, kind of like Harvard Business Review, stories. It's just a collection of stories about a selected subset of ATE centers around the country and in a variety of fields. So not just IT, we do have an IT center we're looking at, but we're also looking at engineering technology and a biology or biotech one, and we have an wind energy center. So we wanted to sample a lot of the growing fields that the Advanced Technological Education program addresses. And we're looking at a couple of things. First of all, I've mentioned earlier this entrepreneurial instructor who gets out there and talks with industry and makes those partnerships. Great, but it's not enough to just have lunch with your friend over at the biotech firm, right? You have to start to develop what we call social capital or partnership capital. How is that constructed? And so we have kind of a model about this that we're using, and it's very multi-dimensional. It's got pretty complex. But essentially, we're really looking at the swaths of equipment, can we use a faculty adjunct? Do you have some materials off the shelf at the company that we can use and then disseminate across our institutions? Sometimes it goes the other direction where industry says, we need some training. You guys are the educators. Can you please tell us how to do this better and serve as a satellite, contract training kind of situation? Or can you do some training on our company site? So we're seeing all these really interesting variations, which everyone in CTE kind of knows about, right? But 2 steps outside of your world, people actually don't know how it's done, and there's a real interest right at the highest levels of, the Obama administration of really ramping this up and trying to make this happen on a wider scale than ever before. And the other piece we're looking at, which it tends to be of less interest to the technician community, but it is of high interest to educators, is how do you teach? What are the teaching approaches? And so the online pedagogy, the active learning, all those techniques. How do you teach differently to get women involved more in some of these tech fields? The pedagogy, it matters. I mean, they call it andragogy, whatever you want to call it. It's typically not what people want to think about when they want to program or do the biotech or the really cool technical stuff. But we're trying to tell that story too. So our case studies are going to talk about how do they establish these partnerships, how do they keep them going, what's the life cycle, how are the local economics sort of helping and hindering, and then also how do the goals set by that partnership filter into what actually happens on the ground in the classroom at the beginning courses, the middle level, and the most advanced. So I think that's all I want to say. Yeah.
So is this a case study at this point?
It's 4 case studies of these 4 centers. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's you're right on target.
Oh, thank you.
In terms of where I teach in the community college, but I also was the director of a program whereby we partner with people with the college and with community partners as well, in making sure that the college knows what the industry is looking for. So I think the information you just shared is so on target of where I feel education is going, and that education is going to cutbacks and all. We have to be more creative and building those partnerships. So I certainly would love to be able to see what your results are at the end and take a look at the model of how you sustain those partnerships and build.
One thing, I have to have a webinar.
Educators generally are not typically people that go out and do business. That's not really their environment. Their environment is the classroom. And so even teaching educators how to go out and build partnerships.
One thing I like about your case study model, I heard a preliminary sort of set of outcomes by Louise and some of her colleagues at the Principal Investigator Conference last fall. And what's great about this research that's being sort of assimilated and then offered to the community in these form of case studies is very accessible. You read it, you see the bullet points, and you get it. Educators get it right away. Those are the talking points. Those are the bullet points. This is what sustains. These are strategies. I mean, it's very accessible. It's like you don't have to weed through a bunch of stuff.
Right.
The researchers and the realm of the looking at the big picture have sort of crystallized it for us. So also looking forward.
Just as a quick dissemination point plug, if you do a Google SRI Community College Research, you'll come to our website where we list all of our publications, and we definitely will be putting things up on this project. We have not yet, and I think it's probably, I don't know, by next fall I hope we'll have some things. I might start putting some briefs out, so, okay.
Mike, anything to add here?
Not really, other than I guess my search, maybe I'm just an old-fashioned kind of guy, but my searches for related things to what I'm doing is going to Google for scholars and seeing what it turns up. And I would hope that there's a better way to do that.
But that is one way, right? It is a way to access what's being done out there. I mean, all of us, the keynote speaker today talked about that companies are looking for people who are multidisciplinary plus passion. Isn't that message from the keynote? So all of us, all of you are multidisciplinary. You can pull in strands and you can seek out information in different ways. Other comments about dissemination of innovation. How are innovative practices that work, that stick, that teachers and learners benefit from? Anything else?
I have one that's kind of drilling down to what you had. You talked about the webinar, which is to a larger amount of folks. A couple of things that I found successful would be a WebEx, which would be one-on-one, and a kind of a mentor-to-mentor type program. And I've seen that done in a couple of ways. One, I had to learn a couple of systems. One, I had to learn a learning management system called Angel. Maybe some of you have heard of that one. And so I took a class on that, and away I went to implement my course. And then I got stuck, and I couldn't remember how to do something. And so I had an Angel mentor. I had someone I could call. I had a tour. Actually, I had a list of people that I could call. You know, who are you going to call? And so that was a way that they were disseminating their information was having a mentor list, and they actually stipend those faculty to peer mentor us. And it was really helpful because it was just maybe one or two questions that I was stuck on. So I had the same situation with a different system. Actually, it was the MyIT Lab, and I had a mentor, but she was in Idaho, and I'm in Washington. And so how are we going to do that? And she had did a web app where she actually took control of my screen, and so we're on the phone, and so I call into the WebEx, and so she takes control of my account and everything, and so we're talking on the phone, and she's doing all of this. And so that was another way I found really helpful, and a very good trend using technology very efficiently, and it worked great. So,
any of you have any other ideas that come to mind about disseminating innovation?
Well, you know, I use a lot of YouTube. I will go to YouTube. My area is in transportation and logistics and warehouse operations, and you know, I could go on and just Google. So because I go on YouTube, plug that in, and then I can choose or select which one is more appropriate, appropriate for the class, and I use that. I'm integrating it into my lesson plan, actually.
That's really interesting because we're actually going to be creating a series of video vignettes that are kind of branded both with students that we have in our programs and a little bit of support from NCIS and the community colleges that we're sort of, the departments that we're working in, like computer science, multimedia studies, broadcast. So the video vignettes themselves will sort of replace, because sometimes like how-to or Houdini or YouTube, it's not very focused on what you really needed to focus on, so we're attempting to have like multiple different perspectives, have it be in Cantonese and Spanish, maybe even take it from video, and in the next 2 or 3 years take another technology that we've worked on and incubated through partnership with Mozilla. So we're going to create a web-native version of these video vignettes, which can only be experienced online. So I'd be happy to share that as it kind of grows and festers, but we're launching everything in a couple of weeks, so see as we go.
Excellent. Well, let's move to our third point. We're almost out of official time, and what I was going to do is suggest that I knew we'd have more than enough to cover just with the types of people that are participating and our experts. I was hoping that if anyone's interested, we could pick up lunches and continue some of the conversation with our experts or among yourselves over the lunch hour. But I wanted to hit this third point, which is something that actually Ingrid suggested to add to our panel. And we're seeing this more and more, especially if you look at STEM from the whole transition from kindergarten through college, in school and out of school programming, and the absolute importance and criticality of engaging families and parents or caregivers in the community, so that, as our keynote speaker said again, we're looking for diversity across the board. We're looking at global diversity, cultural diversity, social diversity, and how attracting young people, youth, into STEM or technology programs, that they don't come as an isolated unit. They come with, like all of us, they come with a system of family support, parental guidance, community leaders, and people who look out for them and coach them through their young years. So I just wanted to give the panelists a chance, starting with Ingrid, a chance to talk about what she sees in their work in the media arts world with bringing the underserved into these programs.
Well, it's a really big, important piece of our programs, and we're actually having Family Night January 18th. So we're having tons of family members. It's a critical component of our program, engaging parents, having curriculum for parents, having parents also have a peer-to-peer learning environment. And because a lot of us are media artists or educators, we're not necessarily equipped to handle like actual parent engagement, especially the different languages. So what we've done is actually we have a really strong partnership with Mission Graduates, which is also a 30-plus year nonprofit organization who's been working with parents in the community, been very successful to demystify stereotypes and concerns about college, finances, IT, STEM. So they've been really excellent at helping us prepare how this is going to look like to really engage parents. And again, with all those video vignettes, like some of them are going to be of parents and parents speaking to parents in the languages that they feel the most comfortable to help demystify it to a much broader audience in those communities. So I definitely think, engaging parents, especially those who might not feel comfortable with English, is really critical, because sometimes the parents themselves is what's holding their children from actually excelling and exceeding. Potentially in like areas where they've just never really understood, like, is that even viable? Like, can you actually make 3D games and make money? Can you actually get a job doing that? Absolutely, of course, right here, right now, definitely. These are companies who are constantly poaching other companies for employees, and it's really our duty to get students who are really talented into those pipelines so that they're the ones who are getting those jobs, and parents know that those jobs are viable and sustainable.
So it's sort of, it takes a community to educate an individual, and for us not to forget that whole community aspect that comes in. Anyone else want to comment on
The only thing I would add is that we have a program where we have inside of a classroom where we teach like an office tech class. We'll have an ESL teacher along with the business tech teacher in the same classroom. And that's been very successful. So while the students are working on their, let's say, an office assistant certificate, they'll have, like if I'm teaching Excel, you might be teaching the English as a second language and helping those students. And we have found that, and there's a big program in the state of Washington in all the community colleges, and it's been very, very successful.
I have one thing to add. At the college level, one of the things we found is some analyzing results, I think, about how women relate to this lab-centric organization. And we have some ideas about why they might do better or like it better, but no significant results yet.
I just went to a session before this that talked about how females perform in computer science, intro to programming, and the move is towards that it increases the retention of both women and men in STEM classes, is to move to the lab, move to the collaborative, move to peer-to-peer, move to, as all of you have indicated, sort of targeted intervention for problem solving and help, targeted tutoring. So there's a lot of research right now about what works in STEM programs, STEM education for recruitment, retention, and success. And there's even at this conference, as you see, there's a whole track today and tomorrow about serving women and girls and the underserved and students of color, the disabled. I mean, we have so many areas that we can tap that maybe have not been addressed yet, that we can bring in into our educational systems, prepare them with career ideas and awareness, and make them successful all the way through the pipeline and beyond. Well, I don't want to short circuit lunch, so I want to thank everybody on my panel, and I want to thank everybody. I asked everybody to bring business cards. You have their contact information in the bios, and I don't know if any of them are going to stick around for lunch, but you're welcome to interact over lunch. Oh my goodness.